We love the living fences. They're amazing. We want them. We need them. Yes, everything good about the living fences. But honestly, why these plants? In this video, I'm going to share the challenges we've experienced with the plants that we are using for living fences and how that has refined our choices. And we'll quickly wrap it up with how we actually plant them. Drop a comment at the end of the clip. Welcome back. My name is Bill, a medical doctor, but a passionate farmer. When I first decided to do living fences, the ideas that I had were ideas that you would have for anyone living in an urban setting. I thought I would have these ornamental plants at the boundaries and they would make quite a nice fence and hedge. But because of the purpose that I wanted to achieve, some plants became inevitable. For example, I had to plant the backcloth tree because it can grow from poles. So I just plant poles and put barbed wire on it, and those poles eventually grow into trees. There are not many alternatives of plants that can grow like that. So like you see, if you use these other poles, the eucalyptus, whichever type of pole that you use, it will eventually break down. The alternative would be to use concrete poles. But those are damn expensive. They would increase the cost by about 40 times. I could not afford that sort of money even if I wanted. And that led us to the first problem: trees everywhere. There are places where I do not need trees. Maybe because it is too close to the road, or there are already other trees in that particular place, or the neighbor on that side just doesn't want very many trees close to their boundary. So I needed places where I could plant a pole that wouldn't rot but wouldn't grow into a tree. And in those places I planted the jatropha plant, or what we locally call a chirowa. It grows into a shrub of sorts but maintains the pole and is pretty strong but doesn't grow into a tree. But secondly, we wanted to plant a living fence that will not disturb the neighbors. So eucalyptus is one of the common plants that is planted in my country as a tree, but this crop is devastating to gardens. If you plant it close to crops, the crops won't grow. So I could not plant it at the boundaries because my neighbors will not be happy with it. The same thing with the finger euphorbia. It's quite a problem. You cut it and then it keeps sprouting. Wherever you drop it, it will grow, and you can't burn it. It's quite resilient to weather and can grow in many circumstances, even horrible circumstances. So it can become a problem if it is not well managed. For that reason, many people don't want to be next to their garden. The other is bamboo. This small bamboo is the invasive type of bamboo. You plant it here, and then in no time, it has gone to the neighbor's land. And like you can see, even if the fence is not yet well established, the few bamboo plants that have actually picked up and established themselves are already doing this. You can see now the bamboo which we planted at the surface is already growing in the middle of the road because it is hard to control. It keeps growing all over the place. So planting such a crop at the boundary comes with quite some limitations. Because of that reason, I could not plant the bamboo in many of the other places, and I only restricted it to a few areas. The best plant that would not affect my neighbors and was available on the village, because I didn't need to buy it, I could get it availably for free from the neighbors in sufficient quantity, is the corn plant. The corn plant can grow to a very good height, and it can become thick enough to cause blockage without affecting my neighbors, and so it is the primary plant that I use for making living fences. But we also wanted plants that can grow together. So Calyandra is a legume. So this plant naturally picks that nitrogen that you buy from the shop, picks it from the air and places it in the soil. So I intentionally plant the Calyandra at the boundary so that it can fix that nitrogen in the soil, and then the other plants of the living fence can benefit from it. So why these plants? Because they are cheap, they are readily available in the village, they don't affect the neighbor's garden, but they can also grow together, and they serve the purpose of the living fence that we've said. Cool, let's switch gears and look at how do we plant. So we have 3 lines, one for the poles supporting the fixed fence planted with the primary living fence, and then second line for the calandra and basil, and finally the inner line which carries bracharia grass. So those are the poles that we plant to support the fixed fence, and we place the fixed fence there. But in that same line, we do plant the primary living fence, which in our case is primarily the corn plant, but in other places it's bamboo or finger euphorbia. Then going to the second line with calandra and basil, these are planted alternately. So when we plant calandra first, the following one will be basil. Then we do calandra again and basil, and really that is the pattern in which we plant them. And finally, for the winter line, we do plant bracharia grass consistently to make a hedge. So looking at this, starting from the outer line, this is the fence, and you can see the barbed wire over here, and just below it we have the corn plant, and you can see some of that over here. Then innermost, you can see the bracharia grass planted, and I can circle it out for you to see it very clearly. Between that bracharia grass and the corn plant, we have calandra interchanged with basil. So what you see here is basil, and also here is another plant of basil. Between those, you can see a calandra plant over here. If we looked at another fence, you can see that in this particular fence we do have the bracharia forming a line on the innermost, and then the chain link together with the bamboo forming the outer line. The turkeys actually eat on this while they are free ranging. Then you can see this fence as well. It actually does have all the plants planted, and if you could quickly scan through this again for just a few seconds, you can see the barbed wire and then the corn plant and the bracharia grass. Definitely whatever you see in between those two, which is the basil and calandra, is in the middle line. For this particularly, at this point we are just planting, so we have just planted the bracharia like you can see on the innermost line, and then just next to it, between the poles and that bracharia, this is calandra, and then here this is basil, pretty young, but that is it. We've just planted it. And on the outermost, we ran short of the corn plant, and we are hoping to plant it in this season that is just starting, but the trees are already up and running.
The downside to a living fence is that it requires time. If you need the fence up in a week or two, you can't do a living fence, so you have to give it time. However, this is easily done by putting the slight reinforcement while the living fence takes action. So you could put up the chain link or put up the barbed wire and plant the living fence at the same time. After a year, the living fence will be in position. The other limitation, a living fence eats up more space.
So remember to leave some space between the actual land boundary where you see that corn plant or that natural landmark and the line of the living fence, so that when the living fence is grown, it does not extend into the neighbor's land.
Our ideal on the farm is to use a living fence but reinforce it with some sort of simple fixed fencing. In areas that are of high value, we would use chain link, but in areas that are less risky, not very valuable, we would use a barbed wire alongside the mixed fencing. What is your experience with mixed fencing? What do you think about it? Share a comment.